Now that we have our bar chart built, it's time to put some other design principles into place here. We've already done a couple, like updating our title, getting rid of our header here. Some of these are defaults by Tableau that we have to go in and change as the designer. So we're going to do a couple more of those. I'm going to show you how we can use color in our titles to really reinforce our message. We're going to talk about our axis down here and how we can clean that up, and then also how to get rid of these grid lines. It's important that we as the designers think kind of towards the end of our analysis in trying to think through how do I best communicate my message to my end user. So thinking about creating dashboards and the design principles are really pointing towards that. So they might not necessarily always need to be done at the visualization level if I'm just looking at this visualization. But as I think ahead to using this visualization among others, these design principles really come into play. So let's look at the color in our title. So I'm going to double click sales by subcategory. I'm going to highlight sales, and then we're going to bold it. And I'm going to change the color so that it matches the same gray that I used for my bars. When I click OK here, you'll notice sales is now bolded in gray. Like I said, for this visualization, that's probably not a huge change. But if I were to use this visualization with other ones, maybe looking at profit or quantity of items sold, my end user is going to quickly see that gray always corresponds to sales. And so that's going to give my end user that chance to just correlate color with whatever the measure is that I'm talking. So it's going to eventually lessen their cognitive load because their brain's going to see gray and immediately know, oh, okay, we're looking at sales here. So it's a very simple change. I really like using color in my titles. I would say this is probably more of a suggestion than it is a best practice. The next thing we're going to look at is updating our axis down here. So I don't want it to say 140,000 with all those zeros. Instead, I want it to just say $140K. So to accomplish that, we're going to come up here to my sum of sales pill, because that's where the axis is coming from. We're going to right click, and then we're going to click format. When I click format, my format window opens over here and takes the place of my data pane. Notice it defaults to axis. So I'm going to click on, or down in the scale section, I'm going to click on this numbers, and we're going to change it to currency custom. Now we already set sales, and it has a default number format of this currency custom. So we're going to change this and kind of append what we did originally to our sales field. Notice when I do it, it changes it, and it's adding in those decimal places. So let's go ahead and get rid of those and move those down to 0. And then you'll see we have display units here. So let's go ahead and change those display units to thousands. Now I see that it says that $120K instead of all those zeros. To get out of this, I can click anywhere in the gray spots. That's going to close that menu. I like cleaning up my axis like that. Granted, my end user probably does not notice that I do, but me as the designer, I like to clean it up. It's just shorter, concise. It communicates the exact same message as what was originally on our axis, but it just does it in a more clean, kind of less cluttery way. Last thing we're going to do is we're going to get rid of these grid lines. So I'm going to right click anywhere in this visualization. Try to not right click on one of the bars themselves, but in some of that white space. Then we're going to click format. Again, it's going to open up my format window over here. It defaults to the font section. We're going to go to the far right one, which is our lines. When I click lines, you'll see that I can effect change on the sheets, rows, or columns. So here's rows and then columns. When I come back to sheet, I like applying my changes to the sheet because it applies those changes across the entire visualization. So you'll notice, even though it says none for grid lines, I still have grid lines showing up. And the reason that is because in my columns, I have grid lines. So I can either change it here, or I can come back to sheet and I can update it here. You'll notice I actually have two selected. I have none and I have the thin line. So I'm just going to click on none, What that's going to do is that's going to override the default of my columns and make sure that there are none showing up on my grid lines. And let's do the same thing for 0 lines. So again, I'm just going to click that line and select none. Let's do it for axis rulers. And I'm going to do it for my axis ticks as well. Again, with each one of these, if you want to get out of the menu, you can just click in a blank space outside of it, and it's going to close it. I'm not going to worry about my trend lines, reference lines, or drop lines. We don't have any of those in this visualization, so I'm not worrying about formatting those. So for this visualization, I've incorporated the design principles that I've wanted. I've gotten rid of some of that chart junk. I've cleaned up my axis, and I'm starting to incorporate color in my titles. And again, it's that designing with the end in mind principle. So at this point, I can go and close my format window, bring back my data pane, and then we have our cleaned up, intentionally designed sales by subcategory bar chart. Thanks.